Here's an idea for a sci-fi adventure story about a kid who accidentally travels through time. We open with some sci-fi and fantasy vibes. Maybe he's building some kind of time-traveling device out of junk in his garage or basement. It could be a ray gun, a phone booth, whatever. He's just some kid with a vivid imagination and a love for tinkering. Then something happens to trigger the time traveling. It could be an old watch that was in his grandfather's will. Or maybe it's an old machine that turns on when he least expects it. Perhaps there's a mirror that acts as a portal to the past. Whatever it is, the triggering device should have some kind of backstory. And it should be something that feels significant to the past. Once he's triggered the time travel, we can establish where he goes. Does he go to the future or the past? If he goes to the future, there's potential for some cool, futuristic settings and technology. But if he goes to the past, there could be some really fun period settings, like the Wild West or Victorian England or ancient Rome. Whatever setting you choose, make sure that there are some clear differences between the time that he travels to and the time that he lives in. In other words, if our hero goes back in time, don't just have him show up in the same town, but with a few anachronisms. Ideally, he should end up somewhere completely different. Another thing you can do to increase the stakes is to give your hero a moral choice or dilemma. Maybe he ends up in the past, and he has the opportunity to change history for the better or worse. Or perhaps he ends up in the future, and he learns that his actions in the present are going to have a major impact on how things turn out. Of course, he shouldn't have any way to change things back. If he did, then the consequences of his actions wouldn't really matter. That's why it's important that he be just an ordinary kid. A kid who doesn't have any special abilities or knowledge that would make it easy for him to influence events. Just an ordinary kid who has to make an extraordinary journey. That said, maybe he does have one advantage. Maybe he knows something about the time that he travels to. That gives him an edge. Like maybe he's a history buff, and he knows a lot about the time period that he ends up in. Or maybe he's a sci-fi fan, and he knows a lot about the future. If you want to keep things lighthearted, you could have him win most of his fights by using future slang or knowledge of future technology to confuse his opponents. But I think it's more interesting if he struggles against the natives. He has to use his wits to survive. And speaking of fighting, I think it's important that he not just run away from all of his problems. He has to face the consequences of his actions. He can't just hide in the shadows forever. At some point, he's going to have to get out there and fight for what he believes in. I think it'd also be cool if he made some friends along the way. The people that he meets shouldn't necessarily trust him at first, but eventually they come to accept him and help him on his journey. Now, when it comes to the ending, I think it's best to leave that up to the audience's interpretation. One option would be to have him eventually find a way back to his own time, but that might be a bit too neat and tidy. I think it's more interesting if he's stuck there forever. That way, the story becomes a cautionary tale about the dangers of messing with time. At the end of the day, though, it's up to you to decide how you want the story to go. I've only provided a basic framework, so feel free to experiment and see where your imagination takes you.